I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
Shout out to our sponsors: Major Team Mortgage, Omaha Laser Dentistry, Exclusively Eye Care, Liberty Core Real Estate, Avier Wealth Management, and Apex Men's Clinic. We appreciate their support.
Hey, are you the type of guy that likes to get up early in the winter to battle your jester? Do you love listening to people drone on and on and on about COVID in the gloom? Would you trust your vision to a guy nicknamed Cataracts? Well, if the answer to any of these questions is yes, fellas, you have bigger problems than you think. Dr. Cataracts, aka Dr. Wolf, can't solve all of your problems, but he can certainly help you solve the problems related to your eye health and vision. You will find many F3 principles throughout his practice. Check him out today at Exclusively Eye Care.
Now let's get back to the gloom.
And we're back. Excited to interview this guy. I distinctly remember running into this guy at Costco one time, sort of F3 guys out in the wild. And I remember calling him by his F3 name, and my daughter's like, she's like, "Why do you call all your friends these weird nicknames?" And I'm like, "Well, it's an F3 thing, right?" And then you're sort of like, "Wait a minute, I think I know his real name." And now we have PaxNet, right? So you can look that all up. But anyway, just a great guy, phenomenal leader. And I've got our man Hindsight on today. So Hindsight, where we like to start off with guys is really tell us about kind of the EH story. So who EH'd you? And then if you remember, what was your first workout like, and how did you get the name Hindsight?
Sure. One side comment, I guess it's funny how I've done the same thing, where I see guys or I'll mention guys at home by their handle, and for whatever reason, like that sticks in my kids' heads. Like, Did you see this guy lately? Like, even if they know the real name, like that's a quick and easy switch, I guess, that is flipped forever. It seems like.
Yeah.
So sorry for the detour already, but yeah, Tight Lip was the one who EH'd me. I'd known him for a little while through men's group at church. We both attend Christ Community Church, but I'm attending a Friday morning men's group there for a while. And I actually kind of became aware that there were a number of guys. The way that one works, you're sitting at the same table each week. So you kind of get to know there's 100 guys or whatever in the room, but there's, 8 or something like that at your table. And so you're touching base with them each week. But he had started attending, and then Hi-Hat was another guy at our table. Cake was another guy at our table. And as I was talking to these other guys, like separately, kind of found out that, hey, wait a minute, he's been like picking off these guys one at a time and getting them signed up, which was really, I didn't have questions, I guess, about it or doubt whether, what Tyler was saying was real or was true. But that was encouraging too, though, just to hear kind of stories from these other guys that had joined in somewhat recently. And I'm hearing a little bit about what their experience had been like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to, I don't know if I do anymore. I used to consider myself a runner. At a former job, there was a group of folks that would go out almost every day at lunchtime and just run downtown. We had a number of different routes that we would do. And so when I left that job, kind of left that group as well, didn't have that kind of that camaraderie and the accountability, and then just the motivation, of, okay, there's people going out. I'm going to get out there too. So I didn't have that any longer. But I still like to think that, maybe I'll be a runner again someday. And so Paradise in particular was my first workout. That was appealing because it was running AO, right? So I remember going there. I really don't remember what our route was that day. I know low flow was on the queue. And I kind of vaguely remember, being in the circle. And I talked a little bit about how at that time I'd been in Omaha for a little over 20 years, and I'd been married for a little less than 20 years at that point in time. So I don't know if it was low flow or somebody else, but somebody picked up on the 2020 and Hindsight landed.
Nice. That's awesome. It's so interesting, right? Because everybody's name is so different. I think we named a guy this morning at the Blue Line. We named him Last Call because he met his wife at a bar or something. But yeah, it's interesting too, just the way you kind of hear about it, right? Like in that, because I think I've been in that room that's where they do like the Omaha leaders lunches and stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Or the
That
student
creates community there. And it's, it's interesting, right? You kind of start looking around and you're like, well, wait a minute, there's all these other guys that, they're going to this F3 thing. What, just kind of initial impressions on that first workout? Were you able to keep up? Did you feel like you were gassed or out of shape, or what was your just kind of initial impression?
I think I did okay. From where I go, honestly, I don't have a lot of details kind of stored in my head then, but I guess what I compare it to, I do remember the very first time I ran with that group at the prior job, having not run like ever and really thinking I was going to die in that one. And things picked up over time. And it's helpful, at Paradise, you've been there, obviously, and you've got some capabilities as far as running goes. But there's attention paid to like, okay, is everybody keeping up? Are we losing the 6? There's stops periodically most of the time. So it was manageable.
Sure. And were you initially, how'd you feel about the name? Were you sort of like, yeah, whatever, it's a nickname, and kind of moved on? Or did you, I don't know, what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It's hard to gauge, like when you first show up, like I do remember getting a bunch of guys' names thrown at me, and like you don't have a kind of the macro view of like, okay, what's the range of how guys land here? It's fun. The longer you're there, you kind of get the view of like, all right, this one was a little bit of we're desperate. Somebody threw something out and it stuck. And then this one was a little more, there's an inside joke to that, or kind of get all the different routes you can take to get there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Tight Lip, his was funny too. I think we interviewed him. I don't think we've published the episode yet, but I think his was kind of like, it was like like you kind of had to be there, right, to know how he got his name. But so you've been in Omaha for almost 20 years. Curious, like what's been your just exposure or experience to like physical fitness? Like, has that been something that's kind of been a part of your life growing up, or is that something you just kind of got into when you started running with your work buddies, or what's been the sort of journey there?
I kind of dabbled, going in school, everybody went to track. So, okay, I'll go out for track. I played basketball for a little while. So, okay, I did that for a little while. Honestly, it kind of dwindled a little bit, like high school years. And it was sporadic, I guess, through college. So yeah, really when I moved to Omaha, 2000, and connected up with that group of runners at my job at that point in time, that was really when it got to be a little more serious. And like there's just a lot of opportunities around here, especially in the running world. The corporate cup goes on every year. There's nowadays, like all the Pink Gorilla events, those guys have all that stuff. Did I think the first 5 market to market relays, like when they first started doing that, a while back. And so it was definitely a regular part of life during that phase. But like I said before, then it kind of definitely tapered off, when I didn't have that group. It wasn't as easy to access. I just didn't do as good of a job as, making it happen on my own when there wasn't anybody else.
Yeah.
I knew was going to be out there every day.
Yeah. That seems to be a secret sauce almost, right? For fitness is having some accountability, whether it's a group or maybe it's a close friend or, but I know on the days I don't post, it's certainly a lot harder to get outside and push myself. And, it's sort of like if we're left to do it on our own, we can find 100 other things to fill the time with.
Yep. And then you throw kids in the mix too. And there's, sometimes that can be helpful for doing some kind of activity, but they also have their own activities, and you throw all those things in the calendar, and it gets more difficult. It's an excuse. It gets more difficult.
Yeah. So where are you at today? Do you feel like do you have some fitness goals that you're kind of trying to achieve, or you feel like you're at a good spot where you're kind of maintaining a good level of fitness for that first step?
Yeah. I mean, I'm fairly content with it. I just recently, I'm a numbers guy, so I'd like to, track, okay, how many posts I had. It's been about 150 the last couple of years since I joined. And so felt pretty good about that.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed, I don't remember what the workout was. There've been a couple workouts like late in the year in 2024 with some more Actually, I do know what it was. It was Tie Lip and Red Ranger. We went out for a run, and I'm not a runner like those guys are these days. So that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, there's some aging going on, but then there's also it's just different. Even like the running AOs, you're going a mile and then you stop. So yeah, I'm content with the fitness, but maybe would like to get a little bit more kind of running endurance, back in again. Have confidence that can get there again, but it's going to take more focused effort on the running piece and the longer running piece.
Yeah. What I'm noticing, and I was thinking about this morning, is, I started F3 when I was 33 years old, right? And so I was running, 2,500 miles a year and go, and now that, two kids later, I'm like, I'm lucky if I hit 1,000 miles on the year, but it seems like, I don't know, maybe it's as we get older, but it's like to get back to where you were, you got to be disciplined and you got to put in the time. And I'm sort of like, well, maybe next year, I'll get back up to that. But I don't know. I feel pretty well rounded. I think that's one of the benefits, right, of F3 is we kind of get the running, but we also get the boot camp workout. I don't know. What's been your sort of experience there?
Yeah. That's where there's definitely been, I could tell personally, gains just as far as being able to, whatever, hoist the kids up at home or whatever. And, that's most definitely improved just kind of the strength and the capabilities that way.
Mm-hmm.
On the running, one thing I was thinking about last year on a long run actually is like, okay, do I need to be more realistic about expectations? Thinking back 20 years, 15 years, even like, okay, the paces I could run and the distance I could run then, it's probably not realistic to think, I should have that as my benchmark nowadays. It's fun to look back and see, yep, this is what I could do then, but
yeah.
Well,
I'm going to try someday. I'll try. I don't know, with little ones at home, but so you came into the group and you kind of knew some guys, right? You had, Cake and Tight Lip and Hi Hat. Talk me through, like, in terms of like that second F piece, kind of building male relationships. Would love to just hear, like, what's been your experience? How'd you kind of get to know guys and start deepening some of those friendships?
Yeah, I made an effort when I first joined to actually I had a little notebook where I was like, okay, I'm going to write down the names of the guys that I met today. Just, kind of for memory more than anything else, really, because it's way too easy for stuff to just kind of go in and then write back out again. So, just the physical act of writing it down was helpful. But I knew, one of my motivations for joining was just that community piece. I'm going to back up a couple of years. So 2020, my wife and I we had 4 boys at home. December, very end of 2020, we were expecting our 5th child, who was stillborn at 33 weeks. And I did not, that was difficult, obviously. And I didn't handle it well at all. My approach was kind of, okay, I can see my wife is really hurting. My thought process at the time, I'm not saying this is a good thought process, but at the time was, okay, I got to kind of put my stuff aside and like press on because we got these 4 boys. I got to provide for them. I got to feed them, life has to go on. But and I've talked a little bit about this in COTs and stuff, the impact of that though, is that, okay, this stuff doesn't go away. The grief doesn't go away. And, not dealing with that doesn't go away. So a couple of years down the road kind of became aware, like, all right, this isn't good. Kind of figure out a way to kind of handle this and figure out where I can talk about this and sort of process this. And so that was actually when I started going to that men's group at Christ Community. And I actually started going to another men's group at a different church and kind of reconnected with some men from a prior church. Yeah. So my wife gave me a hard time. She's like, so going to men's group is like your hobby now? Kinda, yeah. But that was what I was seeking though. It's just, okay, I got to find a way to connect with other guys and just be open and honest about, hey, here's the stuff I'm dealing with. So, but the same thing applied in F3 as well, right? That, okay, you can just show up and be there and you'll see some people, you can say, hey, and, whatever, talk about football games or what the temperature is. And then that's it, wrap up, call it good. But for me, and I guess with my personality, kind of had to make more of an effort to like, all right, no, I'm going to look up these guys. That's been great, right? To get numbers and be able to text guys after the fact or whatever and say, hey, really enjoyed chatting with you today. On occasion, kind of get together with guys for lunch or coffee or whatever, or just, in a cafeteria too. Just, I don't know. I'm a lot more comfortable talking with guys one-on-one or two-on-one, that kind of thing, as opposed to when there's 20 guys standing in a circle. That's a little tougher for me, kind of be open and put everything out there. It's definitely taking some intentionality to build those relationships, and not everybody is there. Not everybody wants to or has time to, outside of a workout,
Yeah.
get together and kind of talk about life.
Yeah. Well, man, I really appreciate you sharing, some of the challenges there. And so you had 4 boys, gonna have your 5th. And then just for guys that maybe don't know, right, difference between a miscarriage and this was an actual stillborn baby. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. She is a daughter.
Yep.
She was 33 weeks. And so
Okay.
there's no like explanation. It happens and it sucks.
Yeah.
But then, about a week or so later, we were in the hospital. Still going through, my wife had to go through birth and everything. So, we got to meet and hold our baby, our daughter.
Yeah.
But she'd been gone for a week at that point.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I would love your insights on like as men, because we had a miscarriage like in 2021, and I remember kind of doing something similar, right? You're sort of like, well, my wife has the bond, right, with this baby, and so that I'm emotionally, I need to stay strong. Why do you think we do that? Why, as men, we're not allowed, or we don't allow ourselves rather to like experience the sadness or the grief, or I don't know. Would be curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that. First of all, it's incredibly common,
Yeah.
which doesn't make it any easier, but,
Right.
but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of I don't know, it's almost a cultural taboo kind of thing. I feel like that.
Yeah.
The picture of masculinity or whatever in our culture just tends to be, you don't feel, or you don't show it, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So that does lead to a lot of just kind of stuffing and moving on. But it's not, like I talked about, and I think you probably know too, it's not healthy. That doesn't really address anything. It's still there. But yeah, I feel like there's a fear, and I've talked about this in a fairly recent COT too. There's a fear. Still to this day, I honestly don't know. If I tell that story, am I gonna fall apart?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Am I gonna be okay? Maybe. There's not. So there's some fear there with like, okay, am I in an environment with people where that's okay if I do end up falling apart and I can't even string sentences together? So that's definitely a part of it. It's just not knowing what the outcome is going to be. I know I too just kind of told myself a bunch of lies, really, about like, well, I don't want to, put that on somebody else. Like honestly, people are uncomfortable when you tell them that kind of stuff, because people don't know how do you respond to that? There's not like a pat, like, okay, I say this and then things are okay. That's just not how it is. Grief in general, right? And that's okay. That doesn't mean that it's wrong or whatever to have a conversation about it. But,
Right.
I could see that if I talked to people. And so that was an excuse, kind of a lame excuse, like, well, I don't want to put that on them, or make them feel uncomfortable by, sharing something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Those were a couple of things that kind of help made me hold back a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. It's funny, and you never know like when those emotions will hit you. I remember giving a COT one time, and I was sharing a verse from a song, and just for whatever reason, just got stuck and just became a ball bag. And I'm a girl dad, so I think I can cry easier than maybe somebody like you that's got all boys. But I just broke down, and I still to this day, I'm sort of like, I don't know what it was, but it was the words I was saying, the guys that were there, sort of the combination of everything that just was like, I lost it. And I love that we have this group where that's okay, right? You're met with support and love and encouragement. And a lot of times you're met with a me too, right? Somebody else has maybe gone through or has experienced the same thing. But man, I would love also to get your thoughts. So you have your wife's comment about men's groups being a hobby is funny, because I'm kind of similar. Like I go, I like to get to know other guys, right? What's been like any like similarities or maybe like key differences that you've noticed between maybe like some of the other men's groups you've been in and F3? Anything that maybe um like one or the other could learn or kind of mimic to be better, or any thoughts in that space?
That's a great question. I mean, the comparisons I'm making, it was all like church groups, So I mean, obviously there's the faith component and, the specific, like, okay, we are followers of Jesus kind of faith component,
Right.
I mean, that's,
Yep.
it's generic in F3. It's broader and, not that specific. Whereas in a Christian church, that's what it is. Right. But yeah, I mean, there's something kind of, magic about the formula that F3's got, where you've got that, that the magnet and the glue, right? Of like, okay, yep, everybody guys need to work out, guys want to do something physical outside. So that's a big draw. It's tougher for a couple of reasons in a church context. Sometimes, like, one, okay, if guys aren't sure, like, okay, is this going to be weird? Like, is this, are they going to ask me to do crazy things that I'm, not familiar with? So obviously that's a difference in kind of a church group context. That there's no physical aspect to it most of the time. I guess I've been to a couple of events where, like, yeah, we're throwing axes or whatever, that kind of stuff for a men's group, but it's more of the exception, I guess, than the rule. So, yeah, I mean, from that aspect, there's stuff I think that those men's groups at church or ministry groups can learn about and kind of pull in that, like, okay, yeah, it's more than just sitting in a room, reading a verse, and maybe you're talking about feelings, maybe you're keeping a service level. I don't know. There's more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like for me, what you're calling out, right? The main difference is there's like that challenge or something, you're doing something physical with exercise, and then you're outdoors and you get through that, right, with these other guys. And for whatever reason, that, at least for me, it allows me to sort of let my guard down, and then I'm almost willing to share anything, right? I've sort of become an open book. And there's been a few times and it depends on the church and the guys in the group, but I think there's been a few church groups or men's groups I was a part of where it felt almost like a Bible knowledge competition, and not so much like we were gonna like we were there to support each other. But I think all it takes is one guy, right, to show up to a meeting like that and share openly and sort of model what's possible. There's a lot of really great church groups. And, I think the other piece I see is we kind of do that in F3 with like Q source, or like I'm in a Tuesday morning Bible study. And of course, in F3 fashion, we meet before the workout to do a Bible study, which is kind of insane. I don't know. Have you noticed any like difference in your relationship with the guys that you do both like F3 and your men's group with at church? Like, are those relationships even stronger?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a common language and touch point, at very basic level of like, oh yeah, did you, where'd you go this morning? Which, hey, oh yeah, how many times did you hit? Do you have a queue coming up next week? So there is that point. But I mean, everybody who goes three repeatedly experience kind of what you described there, right? Where you've gone through something challenging side by side with somebody else. Everybody's breathing hard. Everybody's, I don't know, maybe you don't make it to the point of failure or whatever physically, but
Right.
you've exerted together. So that does kind of, you've got that common bond that you can kind of start from. And honestly, I mean, sometimes some of the other guys from our table at church, you kind of look at us sideways, like, what? You guys did what? What are you talking about? You were outside and it was
Especially when it's cold out, right?
degrees. Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about, just kind of would love to get your thoughts on like shield lock or that sort of concept from an F3 standpoint? Is that something you feel like you have gotten into or found a kind of that core group, or maybe you already had that before joining F3?
Yeah. Formed a shield lock with tight lip and hi-hat.
Oh yeah.
Again, two guys from that church group. So I kind of knew them before. And then, yeah, just kind of hit it off anyway. We're, pretty easy to kind of banter over text or whatever and chat. And then, yeah, having that common language for F3. having, some common experiences or hearing the same message, Friday mornings at men's group. That gave us another kind of touch point. We started, and I don't remember if those guys called it that before. We actually usually show up like before the men's group meeting at 6:00 on Fridays. Like we'll show up at, 5:15 or whatever for what we refer to as pre-talk now.
Oh, yes.
So I don't remember if they were calling it that before F3, or if we just kind of borrowed the language from there. But so we're meeting, and then I had run across a while ago an organization called Kinsman.
Okay.
So it's a guy, he's in Missouri, actually, like the Springfield area, but he had put out, and it's a men's ministry, Christian ministry for sure. No doubt about that. He put together this Kinsman journal, he called it. So just a collection of essays kind of around 3 different themes: faith, fatherhood, and work, just because, those are kind of common things for most men. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been using that kind of as a basis, like when we get together for our official Shield Lock discussions, we'll touch on one of those essays and just kind of dive deep into, okay, what do you think about, what he said here? They asked this question, how would you answer that in your life or as a parent or whatever? So it's been a lot of good material, and kind of circling back around, the aim of that Kinsman group was to really just kind of foster or encourage conversations among men about things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, kind of see a lot of overlap there between, what he's trying to do there, and then what F3 is doing as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wrote that down. I have to check that out. That'd be a good one. You could get a group of guys to do a book study, or like you guys are doing, right? Just kind of read through and talk through the topics.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
And it's kind of nice when it's like they're independent, different authors wrote these different essays. So you got whatever, 3 or 4 pages, it's not super long, and it's not a prerequisite that you read these 5 of them before you get into the 6th one. So it is kind of nice to have these sort of standalone chunks.
I love it. That's really cool.
Are you or someone you know in the market to buy a new home? Well, if so, check out Major Team Mortgage. They specialize in home purchase and refinance home loans. Their mission is to purposely empower people to experience their good life through building wealth with real estate. Showing up in the gloom is no different than showing up for a conversation around your future of building wealth with real estate. Join the action economy and get in the game with Sasquatch. Text or call John at 402-212-0149 to schedule a time today. Individual NMLS number 1393750. Company NMLS number 2478164. Equal housing lender.
Kind of the other topic we like to talk about in the second F kind of piece with fellowship, just think about like the concentrica and just kind of relationships in general in your life. And so we'd love to just kind of hear if F3 has had an impact, do you think, on maybe your relationship with your M, or maybe with your 2.0s. We'd also love to hear if your 2.0s have been to any workouts or not, but talk us through that.
They have not. I've tried. My oldest is, he's 18, he's almost 19.
Okay.
And so I've tried. He's a night owl. So like the idea of being up and, heading out the door at 5 or 5:15, whatever, has been an obstacle that I've not yet been able to overcome, but I'm still hopeful one of these days. And the younger guys, hey, they know about it. I talk about it, and they'll find if I'm queuing or whatever, and I've got the Nemo video, they'll find that, they'll see that, and they'll watch it like repeatedly and crack up at like, what's that guy's name? What did he say? So
how old are the other 3 boys?
So 18, 15, 11, and 8 are the other guys.
Wow. Okay.
So they're aware of it. I had them last summer, had a big load of mulch delivered. We've got a bunch of different, areas around the yard where I wanted to put mulch down. So I had all this mulch dumped in my driveway and needed to, move that out of the driveway so we could actually use it. So I got the guys, my boys out there to, help. Like, okay, we're going to shovel it into the cart and haul it back and dump it and repeat a million times. But part of my sales pitch to them was like, okay, so this is Mulch-O-Rama. Like, this is an F3 thing. And so then I did a Nemo video with them at the end of it.
Nice. And
had them, it was kind of fun, just chat with them, about like, well, what do you want? What do you think your name should be? I think this would be a good fit for you. And, so it's fun to do that. And we'll see. Like I said, I'm hopeful my oldest will come out sometime soon. And the other guys, maybe to a 2.0 workout at some point or later on.
I like that mulcho-rama. I might steal that. Maybe, cue a special workout at my house and invite some F3 guys over. I like that.
I don't know if it'll work like repeatedly, but
yeah.
at least one off, it's
Right. Yeah.
a hit.
What, in kind of, going back to what you were sharing at the beginning and kind of your, what you and your wife were going through, and then kind of now would love to kind of hear like his F3 or maybe combo of F3 and the men's group at church. Like, do you feel like that community involvement has sort of helped you kind of work through some of those emotions, and maybe how has that impacted your marriage?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, read a million books about grief and, talk to counselors and stuff like that. And so just kind of learning like, all right, this is how it works. It doesn't just go away. It doesn't just dissipate. That's been huge. And then kind of like we talked about before, just kind of having some outlets and being able to share, whether it's in a COT or, while working out, doing workings next to a guy or whatever, has been huge. And I'm actually thinking I should ask my wife this. I feel like my confidence level has gone up since joining F3, just in being able to approach guys, have conversations, that kind of stuff, but then just feeling confident, secure, I guess, and like, okay, this is what I need. I need to have some physical activity. I need to, connect with some other guys to be able to have kind of real conversations, and feeling confident in like, all right, like I need to kind of put together my schedule or my day or my week or whatever to make sure those boxes are checked, has been tremendously helpful. And F3 definitely is a vehicle for, some of that stuff happening, those relationships getting set up, just that physical outlet of getting stuff taken care of that way. And then, again, the confidence, but then the encouragement too, to be kind of bold and transparent. Sometimes I don't want to start some conversations just suspecting, okay, this is the road they're going to go down and I don't want to deal with that now. But I mean, you have to, like the things that are important need to be out there and need to be addressed. And yeah, that confidence has been kind of pivotal really. And that improving that too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about like the relationship between that confidence that a guy gets, like this sort of like confidence and strength and like who you are, right? And being kind of comfortable in your own skin, and sort of then our mission of reinvigorating male community leadership. I think those two things, once a guy, you kind of lead a workout and you start getting acclimated to the group. And then I think you start to see guys just like, okay, I got this, right? I don't need to be timid or really hold back. I love seeing that. That's probably one of my favorite things to watch. You see a guy come in and kind of get on fire, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's fun too. I guess I'd add. I mean, different guys have different personalities, right? And a lot of times that will come through in the workouts they're queuing or the COTs or whatever. And that can be a progression too. Just guys being okay with like, all right, I'm not going to do this the same way as that guy did, but so what? That's okay. That doesn't make it invalid or less useful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love that. I think there's just so much we learn from kind of hearing how different guys go through stuff. So appreciate you sharing on that. I would be curious, as we're thinking about fitness, fellowship, faith, and we've kind of talked, kind of a little bit about faith throughout our conversation today, but would love to kind of hear what's been your kind of journey. I don't know if you look back, to childhood or growing up. Would love to kind of hear like what was that like, and how'd you, I'm curious how you got to the point where you sort of like that's where you turned first, right? When you went through this challenging time, it sounds like anyway, you kind of leaned in more to the church for kind of support and that sort of thing. So talk us through your journey there on the third F.
Sure. It's complicated for sure. Growing up, we generally went to church, and it was kind of more of a check the box kind of thing that like, all right, yeah, this is because we want you to have a relationship with Jesus. So I didn't really grasp that growing up. And then when I got to college, I kind of had two groups that, that I had my friends that we would go to, like the college ministry group or whatever, and they were, all in, sold out. So I'd hang out with them some. And then I had my other group that I'd hang out with where that wasn't the focus. And there was more alcohol, having fun, whatever, that was more of the focus. So I got to a point where I moved to Omaha in 2000 after graduating, got a job or whatever, which was the perfect spot to be really at that point in time. And I, looking back, I fully believe God led me here. There's a reason I'm here. But what was nice was that I didn't have any connections. I didn't know anybody here at that point in time. And so kind of did a lot of thinking then about like, all right, well, which side is the real one? Like, okay, I wear this hat sometimes, I wear this hat sometimes. And so, and it kind of bothered me, like, all right, well, what's real? What's my actual identity, right? So at that point in time, it kind of chosen, all right, door A, like that's the way to go for sure. Got involved with the church then and everything. And I really kind of feel like that was when I sort of embraced and made like that was my faith. Then I'm choosing to go down this path because of all these things that I've seen and what I believe. And that's for sure where I want to be. And then I don't know, I mean, like a lot of people, we've had kind of ups and downs in our experience with churches over the years. Reality is it's made up of people, I mean, there's no way around that. They're human institutions. And so do things get done perfectly? Nope. Do people make bad choices and hurt people? Yeah, that happens. So without going into a ton of detail, we had some rough experiences with churches in the city over the years. So unfortunately we were kind of sort of floating a little bit kind of in between in 2020 when our daughter died. And so it felt a lot like we're kind of drifting here. Like we don't have a really solid foundation to go back to, which was tough. I mean, honestly, since then I've been, and I would say even to this day, still kind of working through some like, man, I'm really kind of angry about, how things went down. And we prayed a lot and it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to, the way we were asking it to. And so that's been, and still is an ongoing journey too, just to get through like, okay, well, I know who you are. I know who your word says you are. I can see all these, times you've been there through history. Maybe others' lives and in my life as well. I have no doubt about that, no question about that. But man, why didn't things go, the way that I wanted them to go in that particular instance?
Yeah.
So yeah, having those other guys from church groups, and then finding guys in F3 too that are on kind of similar paths. Everybody's on at a different point, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely made connections with other guys that are kind of in similar places as far as faith goes. That's been helpful. That's been encouraging. I mean, to hear kind of what they're going through or what they're doing. Even just practical things like, oh, hey, I make sure that I take this time to pray every morning. That's helpful. But then also just to hear kind of openly, all right, well, yeah, I'm struggling with this right now, or this has really kind of got me off track. And so knowing that there's other guys that are not giving up their faith, even though they've got issues, or there's some, like I said, that maybe they're angry.
Yeah.
Something that happened as well, and trying to work through that. That's helpful to know that there's lower.
Well, I love that. And it's cool to hear, I think just to hear kind of how you've approached these different seasons of life, right? As you're going through things and really, I think choosing to kind of, make that choice, right? Like, okay, I'm going to choose to go and really kind of solidify this as my faith. I think it's so hard because for men, and really for all of us, but for men in particular, right? There's a lot of different things sort of trying to tell you who you are, right? Whether it's, the world or media or, social media, even now AI, right? You could probably find a chat bot that would tell you what your identity is. But I would encourage guys, as they're hearing you share your story, just really, really think about that. Who are you? I think there's just so much, if you have a firm understanding of who you are, right? And for you and I, right, that's who we are in Christ, because we both believe in the same thing. But I think it's, if you can't answer that question, right, then I think there's a lot of other dominoes that are really hard to stand up in life if you're really struggling with that. But tell me more about this kind of ability or kind of place you found yourself in, where like you have this confidence in a God, but you're also still wrestling with some things. How do you do that? Because I think there's maybe a misconception that like as soon as you're mad at God, you got to go find a new one, but you aren't doing that. So talk me through that.
Yeah, that's a great question. If you, like I said, read probably a million grief books, and 2021, 2022 timeframe. But a lot of them will point back to, and I think it's right, that, okay, look at, Psalms and look at Lamentations. I mean, there's all these examples in scripture of David or, others just kind of sort of asking similar questions, right? Like, what the heck? Why is this all going on? I do the things that I'm supposed to do. I'm, following you, God, the way that you tell me to. And then this, what? And it's super difficult as, humans who we're selfish, right? Like we look at what's around us here and now, and that's what we know. I know about you. I like to control things. I like to know. I'm going to do this, and this is what's going to happen. And when it doesn't work out that way, there's questions like, well, why? Why is that? But I guess, what I had to come back to, I kind of referred to it before, is like, all right, well, I can look back through my life and see, all right, here's a circumstance, something that happened where God showed up. That happened. Thankful for that. There's certainly gratitude there. And then you can read all these things in scripture where same thing, promises that God made, and maybe it took hundreds of years, but yep, those were fulfilled. So to me, it seems kind of silly then to be, and really pretty self-centered, kind of self-focused, to be like, okay, well, this happened yesterday and I'm ticked off about that. So let's just toss all that other happen. Is it easy? No. I mean, it like that for sure, is a valid reaction of like, man, this went on and I didn't like it and I'm not happy about that. But again, it's okay to have those emotions and even to take that stuff, to God and say like, this is what I'm feeling. I'm really torn up about this. Help me, get through this here.
Yeah.
And that's, I think I've said it before too, but I feel like I'm still kind of rebuilding some like relationship with God after 2020 and all, because that was a big one, things not going the way that I wanted them to.
Well, and I love that you're choosing to wrestle with God like through that, right? And instead of sort of denying, your faith and the things that you put your faith in, right? You're going back to that and having those conversations. I think that's one of the things, right? Is like God wants us to do that, right? He wants us to ask him questions and have emotion when we're interacting with him. And I think it's something that I know I don't do probably enough, right? I try to control it, and then once my plans don't control it the way I want to, then I go to God, and then I get frustrated when he doesn't do what I want him to do the way I think he should do it. I have to remember, like, well, if he's really the God of the universe, like I believe he is, then he doesn't need my plans, right? He's got a way better idea around how to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. But yeah, there's stuff that you can't explain why, and it hurts, and so those are things that I think just continue to go back to them and wrestling with that. I think, so kudos to you for being able to do that.
Yeah. And as hard as it is to admit it or be okay with it, I mean, we're not, even as Christ followers, we're not promised smooth, easy life, here and now. It's a long-term, eternal,
Right.
horizon, that we're looking towards. And so,
Yeah.
it's true. And it sounds nice to say. It doesn't always feel nice to go through it. Right. So that can sound kind of trite, I guess, but that's something I guess I try to come back to, is that, this is here and now, and as all consuming and worst feeling ever as this is, like, this is still kind of a little blip in the big picture.
Yeah. And it may be for many years to come, right? It's a big deal. I think about guys like, Barbershop, or, even like Low Man. I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet him, but he lost a daughter, 3 years old, to cancer. And there's a lot we can't explain. And a lot of it is just due to the sin and brokenness in our world. But even that explanation is, you're like, I get it. But I love what you said there, because I think sometimes in our minds we're like, but I've been doing all these things. I've been doing I've been going to church, I've been praying, I've been reading your word, and so that stuff is supposed to happen to other people, not to me, right? But anyway, I'll keep praying for you guys on that, because I'm sure that's a journey. What would you say to men that are maybe searching or sort of I don't know, maybe they're undecided about what they believe in, or maybe who they are. What any sort of advice or thoughts there for guys that are maybe still trying to figure out what they believe and who they are in the big scheme of things?
Gosh, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, look, that matters, like who you are, like your identity at the core. I think you said that before, right? That is important to be. I guess I'd put forth, to be a good leader, and a good husband and a good father. You have to have that figured out. Like you can't, if you're, kind of wearing one mask here and a different mask here, and if they're kind of in opposition to each other, that's an extreme example, but I mean, something's not authentic there, right? Like you're not being truthful in one of those settings or the other. So yeah, I guess that'd be my encouragement is that, okay, everything kind of builds from your identity. And so it's worth spending time kind of figuring that out. That doesn't mean you have to, like, okay, I can't talk to these people anymore. I can't, go to these places or do these things anymore. But, just kind of reflect on that. Does that match like who you truly are?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And don't let your identity get caught up in a job or a title, right? I know
Yes.
I've spent many years doing that, and that's a dangerous road, because if that title or job ever goes away, you kind of feel a little lost there. But
Yeah,
well,
that's been
go ahead.
another comment I was going to throw in there. I think we talked kind of early on too about like I'm being a business owner now. Like that was a tough shift to go from, I'm a people pleaser. Like I like people to be happy and to get, whatever they want. So to have, a boss who, what your objectives are, be able to do that. And then not to have that, that was a little bit of a kind of a redefinition process. And that kind of goes back to the identity thing too, like really thinking through and figuring out, all right, well, this is what I did before, because I was, trying to meet these expectations. Is that still what I want to do now? And is that fair to, like I said, my family, my kids, my wife and everything? Or is there going to be, actually setting some boundaries there and kind of setting the tone and really encouraging, our employees to do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. There's a lot of guys. It's interesting the number of guys that own their own business too within F3. I've often thought like we could probably have a really cool episode or series of episodes just around like how navigating that sort of as a business owner, entrepreneur, but that's maybe for another episode.
Yeah.
I do want to get your thoughts, right? So our mission to invigorate male community leadership. And so we do that through, your VQ and getting to be a site Q and some of those things. Talk us through kind of your experience as a site Q. What was that like?
That it was good. It had its ups and downs, certainly. But Mess Hall is it's kind of a unique site.
Mm-hmm.
Every AO is different, kind of got its own location, obviously, and personality. Mess Hall was appealing to me kind of early on. Tyler introduced me to that one too. I think he was going there on a pretty regular basis. So, but it was appealing that it tended to be a smaller group. 8 guys there, like is a pretty good turnout as opposed to 28 guys.
Mm-hmm.
That was appealing to me just because that's more comfortable. I mentioned that before, right? That having kind of the smaller group is, it's just a little bit easier to, for everybody, I think, to not be wearing the mask or putting up here's my outer appearance. And it's slight plug for Mess Hall. Like there's so many different things there. You got the hill, you got the path, you can go run around the neighborhood. There's the playground, there's the soccer field. So just a ton of variety available there too. It was fun to kind of step into that and be able to kind of shape it a little bit. I found myself kind of partway through the year though, getting caught up a little bit and, oh man, there's only, 4 guys here this week and there were only 3 guys last week. And man, is the site like failing? Am I not doing something that I should be doing? It's sometimes that's just kind of how it goes. There's ebbs and flows in guys' availability. Honestly, what's going on across the street at West Side? That has an impact. If there's somebody who draws a big crowd there, then you're probably not going to get that many coming to Mess Hall or Coop if it's Thursdays, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good, lesson in perseverance, right? To just kind of like, well, okay, that's who's here this week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool. We hopefully got a good workout for those guys, and hopefully got a good opportunity to get to know those guys a little bit better and maybe a little bit deeper than you would have otherwise if you were somewhere with, like I said, 20 other guys.
Yeah. And back to the identity piece, right? Like, your identity is also not defined by the number of guys that show up to your site, or like I always get, it's like how many guys show up to my queues, and that number's not always very high, right? So early on, I would be like, well, people don't like me, and it's like, no, they just don't want to do 100 burpees, right? So no, that's a really good lesson. And I do think there's something like SkyQ, is playing a bigger role than we probably realize, right? In sort of determining who shows up where every morning, right? We think we're controlling it because we get in our car and we drive there. But there have been numerous occasions where I went somewhere and somebody else happened to be there, and either I needed to say something on my heart and I needed to hear what they said in response, or vice versa. And so it's so cool to me to, like, like you said, if it's these 4 guys, these are the 4 guys that showed up, and these are the 4 guys we're going to focus on, this morning. And I think that mindset for the site queue is super important.
Yeah, that's great.
I would be curious, talk us through like anything you learned. I think that's a huge learning, just that resilient mindset, but anything else that you would maybe share as advice, and then would love to hear about succession planning, kind of how you worked through that.
Sure. I think, probably the biggest piece of advice is just, keep going. Do the thing, get somebody out there, be supportive. Yeah. I mean, these are all kind of basic things, right? For site queue. I think I got caught up a little bit too much early on too, with like, oh man, am I getting the right tone in the pre-blast? It's just enough. Same thing, is it getting enough likes and everything there?
Yeah.
Whatever. It's, there's the information is out there. If guys want to come, guys are going to come, or if SkyQ directs them to come, like you said, right? So yeah, just do that. As far as succession goes, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, kind of winding down, like, okay, I don't have like a clear plan of like, okay, here's the way I'm going to go. Ended up with kind of talking to a couple different guys. And as it worked out, like the Blue Bunny took the flag, which was perfect. It's been awesome to see him grow, accelerate in his time in F3, and just to kind of learn about, okay, this is who he is. These are the kind of things that he does in his life now. And here's why he's doing those things now, because he's learned the last, 5 years or whatever, that this path is more good. But yes, I mean, that was just kind of, that worked out perfectly. Like he was willing to do so. It was great timing, I think, for him and his journey, and a good opportunity really to just, kind of step up, take a little bit more of a leadership role, and do a few more things. It's easy to, I tell people that, like when they're interviewing for jobs too, like it's easy to kind of get caught up in like, oh man, there's so many details and I got to get all these details on these checklists, right? No, I mean, if you take a step back and kind of look at, all right, here's like the big must do kind of things. Do those. That's going to be enough. Maybe it's not going to operate exactly the same way as some other AO, but do that. Take on the opportunity for leadership when you get it, and yeah, be there, be consistent. Things will be good.
I love it. It's interesting. I sort of remember all these different sites, and when we launched them and the conversations, it was like when we launched Mess Hall, I think Coliseum was really blowing up, and but it was all guys in that same part of town, right? So it was like, well, let's launch a site over here and see what happens. And it is interesting because you do kind of get this, like, if it's a, I'll pick on Toadstool, right? If Toadstool's at one or the other, like everybody's gonna go there because everybody loves Toadstool, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool. And that's I love that site. What, anything else on your mind, maybe things that we didn't get to cover that you would want to share with guys that are listening?
No, I mean, I guess the only other thing I can think of is this one of the reasons I got there, was almost exactly 2 years ago. So January, but it was like, okay, it's a new year, got to start doing something more regular, kind of rode that sentiment, right? As your EHing guys, use that everybody feels that to some degree, some kind of reject, like, I'm not doing the resolution thing. But, a lot of guys want to do something, want to improve things. So yeah, make use of that. And then just, I guess the other thing I'd say is just, reach out to guys. I don't know, in my experience, sometimes I'll text people, I'll get a 1-word response and that's it. Okay. Sometimes it grows and it's more of a, ongoing conversation, but, nobody necessarily loves being like kind of that first contact or the first one to reach out. So just do it. It's pretty minimal effort and investment, right? To just look somebody's number up and send a text. So
Yeah.
do that. You don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah. And Paxanet is there for that, right? I mean, I love
Yes.
that. It's been
Yeah.
a really great tool for that.
That's awesome.
Well, kind of where we like to wrap up is where, as you're thinking about life currently, where do you need prayers or support, or when we see it, what's something we could kind of check in with you on and give you some encouragement about?
I'd say the whole grieving thing, is still, it's an ongoing thing. So progress there. Relationship with my wife, that's still will always be an ongoing thing, right? And then and parenting is a big one. I brought that up a couple times recently, that different kids have different things going on, different points in time, and so it's helpful just to know that there's other guys that are praying for you, and that.
Yeah. Heck
Thank
yeah.
you. Appreciate it.
I'll be praying for you there. I can't imagine. Jukebox is a guy I think about who just had boy number 4. And I don't know, we've got 3 girls, and I think
That's awesome.
the way Jukebox and I kind of discussed it was it's easier for me now and it's harder for him. But once they get to high school, then that may swap, right? It may be harder for me when they're in high school and easier for him. I don't know.
They're all individuals, so
yeah, for sure. Well, this has been awesome. And I just have to say thank you for sharing your story. And, I think it's really encouraging, inspiring to me, just, your faith and just how that's embedded clearly in your identity and sort of who you are and who you carry yourself as a leader. And I think that's really, really cool and really special, something that I definitely admire about you. So I appreciate you just being able to share that. And hopefully if guys are listening, they'll reach out and kind of check in, but also maybe pick your brain about some of the things that you shared today. Let's do a little name-orama here. I'll start us off. Brandon Flehardy, 39, The Plague.
The Plague. It's in pile 46, Hindsight.
And have you come up with a call sign or a callback or anything like that?
No, that you guys will kind of throw out random things time to time. Nothing's really stuck.
Nothing sticks. Yeah.
That's
a tough one. We'll have to get Swiper or somebody on that to figure out what the callback is for Hindsight. I appreciate you, brother.
Is that like an official role?
Yeah. Well, I think in Sarpy he's kind of referred to as their pastor because he likes to pray them out. But I don't know. Nice. He's also really good at coming up with these callbacks. But no, nice. I appreciate you, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Yep. You too. Thanks a lot.